So we are reading Parshas Korach, and as was mentioned, Korach made a fight against Moshe and Aaron. He got a whole bunch of people involved, and there was supposed to be a showdown. There was. Korach spent the whole night rabble-rousing. The way he did it was by going to individuals. That's really the key to running a successful political campaign, is to deal with individuals. And then once you have enough individuals, they can form into a group. So he really spent the night going to individuals, explaining why he was the better leader, and Moshe was wrong, and Aaron was wrong, and all the complaints that he had. And promising them that if he would be the leader, things would be different. Like your standard politician nowadays. So there was supposed to be a showdown in the morning, and there was going to be people bringing incense. Hashem was going to choose one, and everybody else was going to die. And right before the confrontation, Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron, and he said, "Hibadlu mitoich ha'eda hazois va'achala oisam kerega." Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. Meaning to say, at that moment, Hashem was so angry, so to speak, that he was ready to do a wipeout. He was ready to wipe out pretty much everybody. Korach had convinced the majority of the Jewish people to come over to his side. So at that moment, it wasn't just Korach who was destined to die, together with Dasan and Aviram and their families, which of course they did in the end, as well as the 250 people from the tribe of Reuven who were bringing incense. But at that moment, Hashem was so angry, if you will, that he was ready to wipe out the entire congregation. Vayiplu al pneim vayomru, Kel Elokeia ruchos l'chol basar, ho ish echad yechata v'al ha'eda tiktzoif. And they fell upon their faces and said, this is Moshe and Aaron, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin and you will be angry with the entire congregation? Excuse me. So Moshe did what Moshe does best, which is he davened. As he davened for the Jewish people on so many other occasions. He davened for them when Hashem wanted to wipe them out by the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. Hashem wanted to wipe them out by the sin of the spies. And here again. And of course, the verse continues, and Hashem says, Hey, Roimu, that basically, if you separate yourselves, everybody should leave the camp of Dasan and Aviram, which everybody did, and all that was left there were Dasan, Aviram, and Korach, and they were swallowed up. So it seems that Moshe's prayer was accepted, and the congregation was spared, and only the main sinners were punished. Now the expression "Kel Elekei Haruchos Lechol Basar" is a bit of an unusual expression. God, the God of spirits of all flesh. Very unusual, not such a common expression in the Chumash. Who knows where else that expression is found? Test your Torah knowledge. This will not count towards points on your grade. Have no fear.
It sounds like something from Tehillim.
Tehillim, I'm not familiar with. It's possible. I mean, I'm familiar with it. I say it, but I don't recall that expression in Tehillim. I do remember it from somewhere else in this very Chumash. In just a few short weeks from now. Anybody? No. Well, in a few short weeks from now, when Hashem tells Moshe that his time is up and there's going to be a new leader, Moshe davens Kel Elekei Haruchos L'chol Basar. That the same expression, Hashem, the God of all spirits of all flesh, should appoint a leader on the community because he was passing away. He wanted Hashem to appoint the next leader so he could pass the baton on. And there the same expression is found. And of course, the commentaries explain what it means over there, as Rashi explains what it means over here. Here we go. Rashi says, what does it mean, the God of spirits? It means that he knows thoughts. The spirit is the soul. Hashem knows what's inside our soul, what's inside our thoughts. Your behavior, your way, is not the way of regular of human beings. Excuse me. A human king, a flesh and blood king, upon whom some of the country has gone sour. He doesn't know who is the sinner. Right? There's a rebellion. The relationship with their king has soured. He doesn't know who exactly is the troublemaker. Lafikach, therefore, kishu koyes, when he's angry, nifra mikulam, he punishes all of them. Aval but they say to Hashem, you lefanecha gluyas kol hamachshavos. In front of you, all of the thoughts are revealed. V'yodeya ata mi'achoyta, and you know who the sinner is. And therefore, ha'ish echad hu achoyta, v'ata al kol ha'ida tiktzayv. Is it possible that even though there's only one man who sinned, you will get angry at everybody? Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Yofa amartem, you have spoken well. Ani yodeya, I know. Umaydiya, and I'm going to inform. Mi chata, who sinned. Umi lo chata, and who did not sin. Okay, so basically Hashem, Moshe is asking Hashem to use his power of mind reading. Hashem doesn't have to read our minds, he just knows it. But whatever expression you want to use, to know exactly who deserves to be killed. And Hashem accepts that, and that's what he does. Now the Rebbe points out an interesting thing. We have another occasion where somebody davens to save wicked people who are enmeshed together with good people. Who are those? Where is that?
Lot was one who was asking to save people in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Exactly. Avraham davened to Hashem to save Sodom and Gomorrah and the merit of the righteous. There, however, he does not use the expression Kel Elekei Haruchos L'chol Basar, the God who knows the spirits of all flesh. In fact, logically, you would think that expression is more appropriate concerning Sodom and Gomorrah than concerning this story. And the reason for that is as follows. L'chol basar, all flesh, refers not only to Jewish people, but also to non-Jewish people. So therefore, when we're talking about the story of Sodom and Amorah, where those people were not Jewish, I'm not sure what nation they were part of. I think they were Semites. I think they were descendants of Shem, if I'm not mistaken, but they were not Jewish. So there you would think that expression is more appropriate because Hashem knows the thoughts of all flesh, including Gentiles. Whereas here, where we're talking about the Jewish people, the expression l'chol basar, for all flesh, doesn't seem so in place. Okay, my friends, so here is the Rebbe's explanation, which is going to lead us into a discussion about hashgacha pratis, divine providence, and try to reconcile the various views about divine providence. So when Rashi says yes.
I found another place where it says the God of the spirits of all flesh.
Yes, where is that?
It's in Numbers 27:16.
Is that in Parshas Pinchas?
I don't know. We're using Numbers 16:22.
Exactly. That sounds like Parshas Pinchas. Exactly. That's the one that I quoted. Correct.
So we're using. So it's also in 27:16.
Yes, that's correct. That's when Moshe was passing on the baton. He wanted somebody to pass on the baton to.
Google.
Very good. Good for Google. Okay, my friends. So when Rashi says a king against whom some of the country has gone sour, it's an interesting expression, gone sour. Now, what it means is, when something goes sour, there's often something that makes it go sour. You put in the lemon juice into the milk, it turns it sour. Or whatever else vinegar or whatever it is. So there is the agent, the souring agent, and then there is that which is sour, but it's not really the cause of it. It's not really the underlying cause of it. It was affected by something else. And that's exactly what is appropriate to talk about over here. Because what Moshe and Aaron were saying to Hashem is, it's true that a large portion of this congregation has gone sour against you, but not all of them are the real sinners. There's only a handful of them who are the real sinners, who are the real troublemakers, who stirred up the pot against you. But the others, they were swept up in this wave of enthusiasm and adulation for this charismatic individual. But it's not really that they're bad, rebellious people. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen were asking, please differentiate between the different levels of sin. This was different than when it comes to Avraham. Avraham was talking about a city that had sinners, major sinners. It also had some righteous people. Lot, his wife, his daughters. Unfortunately, his married daughters and sons-in-law didn't want to come, but, they weren't so bad. So those were the tzaddikim, quote unquote, that Avram was talking about. And for that, it's not necessary for him to mention Kel Elokei Haruchos L'chol Basar, the God who is the God of all spirits for all flesh. Because in that case, it was fairly clear who was righteous and who was not righteous. There was no mind reading necessary. Even an outside onlooker who would have paid attention to the goings on in Sodom and Amorah, would have known who's a sinner and who's not. Here, it's more subtle, because you had a whole group of people who were complaining, and you have to figure out, Hashem has to figure out, so to speak, who is stirring the pot, who is the real person, who's the troublemaker, and who is being swept along. That's not so clear. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu davened, mentioning these terms, indicating that Hashem knows everybody's thoughts, and therefore he should judge them in the most appropriate manner. Okay, my friends, and now we come to discuss Hashgacha Pratis. You all know what Hashgacha Pratis means? What does Hashgacha Pratis mean?
It's ordained, sort of like ordained, Hashgacha Pratiyut. It's means I'm trying to think of the right words to use. It's not coincidental. In other words, it's
the exact opposite of coincidental.
That's what I'm saying. It's the opposite of that. Yeah.
Hashgacha means supervision. Pratis means specific. Specific divine supervision.
Divine will.
I'm sorry?
Divine will.
Divine will? Well, divine will is a general term. Here we're talking about specific divine supervision over every aspect of this world. Hashem has a will, for sure. But here we're talking about Hashem taking specific note and paying attention to all the specifics of this world. In English, it's normally translated as divine providence. And I don't know if the translation is correct, because the whole point of Hashgacha Pratis is specific divine providence, specific divine supervision, as opposed to Hashgacha Klolis. Hashgacha Klolis means general divine supervision. Now, most of us are familiar with the Hashgacha Pratis concept, which is that Hashem looks after everything in the world. There is nothing in the world that Hashem does not look after. Nothing he doesn't know, nothing he doesn't take care of, nothing he doesn't make happen, nothing he doesn't make exist at all times. So if there is a leaf blowing in the wind, says the Baal Shem Tov, every single turn of that leaf is part of the divine plan. Exactly where it rests is part of the divine plan. And if it protects a particular worm and gives it shade and allows it to live, depending on where it stops, is part of the divine plan. And not only that, but it contributes to the general purpose of creation. And therefore, my friends, there's nothing ever to get angry at. I'm just going to take a little segue here from the topic. Nothing ever to get angry at. Who are you angry at? Hashem. Hashem is making it all happen. Nothing happens outside of Hashem. If the leaves and the worms are Hashem's doing, how much more so if you're stuck in a traffic jam? How much more so if you miss your flight? How much more so if somebody spills coffee on you? Or who knows what else happens? You think it's a mistake? You think it's an accident? Think it wasn't supposed to happen? Well, Hashem made it happen. So who are you angry at? You're angry at Hashem? What's going on? So this is the famous interpretation of Hashgacha Pratis. However, you should know, my friends, that this is an innovation of the Baal Shem Tov. This is a relatively new piece of Jewish theology. prior to the Baal Shem Tov, the opinion that was mainstream was the opinion of the Rambam, which is hashkacha klolis, general divine supervision, non-specific divine supervision. And the Rambam, in his Guide to the Perplexed, mentions various theories about how Hashem runs the world, or maybe doesn't run it so much. Of course, not all the theories are Torah theories, but he goes through different theories. And one of the theories that he specifically rejects is Hashkacha Pratis. He calls it foolish. Like, what does Hashem care, really, about the leaf and the worm and the fish and the wind? I mean, whatever, like, who cares? It's not important. Why would Hashem look after something like that? It's not relevant. Makes no difference. Rather, says the Rambam,
Rabbi?
yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but how does hashkacha, lalas, and hashkacha pratiyut apply to, let's say, pogrom or Holocaust in that regards? I mean,
Well, the
how
Rambam agrees. The Rambam agrees with hashkacha pratis on human beings, especially Jewish people. Let's read the Rambam. It's in the handout that I sent out this morning. Guide for the Perplexed, Volume 3, Chapter 60. In the lower or sublunary portion of the universe, divine providence does not extend to the individual members of species, except in the case of mankind. That's a very important except. Except in the case of mankind. It is only in this species that the incidents in the existence of the individual beings, their good and evil fortunes, are the result of justice, in accordance with the words, for all his ways are judgment. So when it comes to mankind, yes, Hashem extends his providence to every individual. But I agree with Aristotle as regards all other living beings, and a fortiori as regards plants and all the rest of earthly creatures. For I do not believe that it is through the interference of divine providence that a certain leaf drops from a tree. Nor do I hold that when a certain spider catches a certain fly, that this is the direct result of a special decree and will of God in that moment. It is not by a particular divine decree that the spittle of a certain person moved, fell on a certain gnat in a certain place and killed it, nor is it by the direct will of God that a certain fish catches and swallows a certain worm on the surface of the water. In all these cases, the action is, according to my opinion, entirely due to chance, as taught by Aristotle. Divine providence is connected with divine intellectual influence, and the same beings which are benefited by the latter so as to become intellectual, and to comprehend things comprehensible to rational beings, are also under the control of divine providence, which examines all their deeds in order to reward or punish them. Okay, listen to this. Okay, so far so good, yes? Before I continue. Hashem looks after human beings specifically because human beings have intellect, and therefore we can approach somewhat and become similar to the divine. This is one of the concepts of Judaism, that a person can behave in such a way that he becomes godlike in his behaviors. So by behaving in this way and becoming similar to Hashem, he therefore extends his providence over us because we're close to him, so to speak. Whereas all the other species in this world, animals and certainly plants, they're not really important. I mean, they have a general importance, but not specifically important. And therefore, the divine providence does not extend to them specifically. Now, he does say, I didn't quote the whole Rambam, but he does say, by the way, that Hashem is mashgiach, Hashem does supervise over the general species. That means that Hashem does want there to be lions in the world. Hashem wants there to be tigers and all the specific species and so on and so forth. And he does look after species as a whole to make sure that they will get taken care of, because that's part of the plan, that there should be all these species in the world. But not after the individual worm, bird, etc., etc. Okay, here's an interesting thing that he says. It may be by mere chance that a ship goes down with all her contents, as in the above-mentioned instance. He spoke earlier about a wind that blew, and that wind caused the leaf to blow over, and that same wind continued on its path, and it blew very strongly in the ocean, and it knocked the ship over, and people drowned. So the Rambam was like, well, what's happening here? Is the ship, is the wind something Hashem willed or not? And if he willed it, then you have to say that the leaves turning is also important. And if he didn't will it, then he doesn't care about the ship either. So what's going on? So now he explains. Or the roof of a house falls upon those within it. But it is not due to chance, according to our view, that in the one instance the men went into the ship or remained in the house. In the other instance, it is due to the will of Hashem and in accordance with the justice of his judgments, the method of which our mind is incapable of understanding. So if we want to talk about that ship, what the Rambam is saying is, the wind is just a wind, and it's just part of nature, and it is what it is. And the ship happened to be there, and it happened to be blown out, blown over, and drowned. And that's just life. And it's not, Hashem is not looking after those things. On the other hand, Hashem knew that was going to happen. And therefore, as to who exactly was going to be on that ship, that is part of Hashkacha Pratis. On that matter, Hashem gives specific Hashkacha. He's looking after that in a specific way, because only those that deserve to die at that moment are going to be in the ship, and those that don't are not going to be in the ship. We just had the Champlain collapse yahrzeit a couple days ago, last week actually. And there are people who never set foot into that building in their lives. And they were there that night and they passed away. And there were other people who lived there all the time, but they went on a trip and they were saved. So Hashem looks after all those details. Okay, now there's another part of the Rambam that I didn't quote just because it's a long quote. And here it is, my friends. Just like there's a difference between human beings and animals, and human beings enjoy hashkacha pratis, specific divine providence, whereas animals only get hashkacha klalis, general divine providence, meaning to say that Hashem looks after the species in general, but not the individual species. There is also a difference within human beings. Those human beings that are closer to Hashem have more hashkacha pratis. Those human beings that are further from Hashem have less hashkacha pratis. Those that believe in Hashem, emulate Hashem, and follow his ways, they are, so to speak, in his inner circle, if you will, and therefore all the details that happen to them are so to speak, arranged perfectly, just so. But the more distant the person is from Hashem, the less he's part of that inner circle that Hashem cares for, and the more he is just left to the forces of nature. Now, this is a perspective that nowadays, if you mention it in a like a Jewish school or something, they might say you're a heretic. Like, what are you talking about? Hashem doesn't care about the leaf and the worm and even the human being who's not a tzaddik or who's not a special Jew. They'll think you're crazy. But this was normative Judaism up till the Baal Shem Tov. And this is the opinion of the Rambam. Now, my friends, the Rebbe asks a question on the Rambam from this pasuk. The pasuk says, "Kel Elokei haruchos lechol basar." Hashem, the God of the spirits for all flesh, which Rashi said means you are not like a human being, a flesh and blood king who doesn't know exactly what's going on with his subjects. Rather, you know their thoughts, and therefore you can distinguish and differentiate between those who went sour due to outside influence and those who are the sour makers, the ones who really did the most damage because they caused the trouble. Now, according to the Rambam, that the sinners are outside of Hashem's circle, and the further a person is from Hashem's circle, the less he is mashgiach on them. He is looking after them. He is caring for them. The more he leaves them to the forces of nature. And there are verses that he uses to support this. So who says Hashem knows the difference? Who says Hashem cares about the difference? They're all sinners, bunch of no-goodniks. Whatever happens to them happens. Let nature take over. A sinkhole is going to open up. Korach's going to fall into it. So what if some other hundreds or thousands of sinners fall into it? Hashem doesn't care about them anymore. They've placed themselves outside of the pale of his inner circle. He just lets nature deal with them. So what if they get swallowed up? Who cares? Why is Moshe stating as if it's an obvious fact that Hashem is going to differentiate between the major sinners and the minor sinners? If at a certain point that a person is distant from Hashem, he just says, you're on your own. No, I'm not getting involved. This is the Rebbe's question. Is the question understood?
Rabbi?
Yes.
I have a question. Now, again, I want to backtrack a little bit. How would this apply to, let's say, Dr. Mengele in Nazi Germany, separating Jews, deciding which ones live and which ones die? So they don't commit Ave wrote all the Jews that were sent to the gas chambers. I mean, how would that play into this?
Well, the people he was choosing from were Jewish people, and presumably they were good people, and therefore there is hashgacha pratis. Hashem is looking after each and every one of those people. Hashem is the one who is deciding who Dr. Mengele is going to decide. That doesn't mean that Dr. Mengele can be excused for any of his decisions, because he is acting as Hashem's agent to do bad. And that's not something human beings are supposed to do. We're supposed to be Hashem's agent to do good. And he's choosing to be the agent to do bad. He deserves punishment. He's evil. He didn't do it to serve Hashem. He did it because he's an evil person. He deserves all the punishment in the world. But at the same time, we believe that for whatever reason Hashem had, he chose who's going to go to the right and who's going to go to the left. Why? That's beyond the scope of this class. I don't know if there's any class that can answer that question, but that's what it is. Okay, my friends, here is where we get a little bit deep. It's good to go deep once in a while. The Mittler Rebbe, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, explains that there actually is no argument between the Rambam and the Baal Shem Tov. They all agree. Don't think that they disagree with each other. They both agree with each other. Now, of course, their opinions seem to be so far apart that it's not clear how it's possible to bring them together. The Rambam says Hashem does not care about the worms and the leaves and the fish and the chickens and blah, blah, blah. He cares about, species in general. Other than that, he doesn't care. He lets the nature run its course. And even within human beings, only the close people. Everything else is just like autopilot. And the Baal Shem Tov says, no, Hashem is involved every worm, every leaf, every wind, every wave, every fish, mamish, everything. It's like so far apart, these opinions. And the Mittler Rebbe, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, explains it's not an argument at all. Because here's what it is. Sometimes Hashem is mashgiach in an internal way, in a close way, in a way that we can feel his involvement, that we can sense his involvement. And then there are other times that Hashem is, of course, knowing everything that's happening, making everything happen, but in a way that is external. It's not, his presence isn't felt. It's like on autopilot. Just like the Rambam says it's autopilot, it just runs. It presents to us as if it were autopilot. Because Hashem sets it up, Hashem makes it happen, but he doesn't show his presence within it. So the forces of nature are really Hashem. What's making nature work? What's making the winds blow? What's making the little electrons run around those neutrons and protons? What's creating the force of gravity? What's making photosynthesis work? There's no separate power to nature. Hashem is the power within nature. But at the same time, Hashem is hidden within nature. We don't see Hashem because Hashem set it up in such a way that it just works and it looks like it's just the way things are without any outside intervention. So Hashem is within that in a concealed way. But then once in a while, we see Hashem within this world. We see Hashem's hashgacha, how Hashem is looking into our lives and setting things up and making it be just so. And about this is the Baal Shem Tov's perspective of hashgacha pratis. Sorry, is the Rambam's perspective of hashgacha pratis. I'm getting confused myself. The hashgacha klalis that the Rambam talks about is the fact that the species exist, that we can see Hashem's hand in making sure they exist. We can see Hashem's hand in mankind. The more a person is close to Hashem, the greater a tzaddik he is, the more he will see Hashem's hand in his life. The closer you are to Hashem, the more you will feel Hashem's presence in your activities. You'll understand why you had to be in that traffic jam, why you had to take that wrong turn, why you had to buy this annoying thing that you have to now return to Amazon or who knows what and waste your time. You'll see, you'll understand. You'll understand. Because Hashem's presence will be felt within your life. So you'll sense that there's a plan behind this, and you'll understand it to a degree. And this is something that tzaddikim do. They see Hashem's hand in all of the details of their lives, and all the so-called mistakes and missteps. They see Hashem's hand. They never take it as a mistake. They always understand that there's something deeper here. And that is the hashkacha that the Rambam is talking about. A revealed awareness of Hashem's presence. That is only found in mankind, and even more so within righteous people.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What about the people who were in Harnov, who were slaughtered and who were praying at the time during Tefillah? How would that play into this?
So that's a different question. That's a question that the friends of Job spent 30-something chapters trying to work out, and they never quite got to it. Why do bad things happen to good people? That is a very hard question to answer, and it deserves a proper attention.
Yeah, it's really too late for them to really reflect on, what Hashem had in store for them and why they did it, because they're already, these are righteous people who are praying, and they're some might even be tzaddikim amongst them, and
right. But of course, that's just one example. Unfortunately, we've had thousands, millions of such questions in our history. The month of Sivan is a month that has particularly troubling days. The pogroms in Europe that happened during the Crusades, many of them were the month of Sivan, the 20th of Sivan. That's why we say Avarachamim on Shabbos Mevorachim Sivan. So it's a very hard question to answer, and there is an answer. Hashem has the answer. Whether he tells it to us or not is another question. But we definitely believe that Hashem is within that ordeal. Hashem is hidden within the ordeal, but he's present. It's not that Hashem allowed terrorists to take over his world, or Hitler Yamach Shemoy to take over his world, or Sinwar, and do whatever they wanted. But no, for some reason unknown to us, that those were korbanos, those were sacrifices that the Jewish people had to sacrifice. Sometimes a person is sacrificed, and somehow, in some way, he saves other people. That is a concept in Judaism, that sometimes one person can die and that can save many others. How that works, why that works, that's beyond. Sometimes it's a Gilgul Neshamas. It's a person had a reincarnation, and for some reason they had to experience suffering in this world, or at least a premature death for some reason. Again, we can't really understand. It's a question that's beyond us. But we do believe that that's not an accident. And that, of course, has to be answered whether according to the Baal Shem Tov or according to the Rambam. Because both agree that when it comes to tzaddikim, Hashem is mashgiach, beprote proteus. Hashem is looking after every single detail. But that's an old question. It didn't start in Harnov. It started with the 10 martyrs. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, Chutz B'Sama Turgaman, Rabbi Chanina ben Chachinoi, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yishmael. Such great tzaddikim leaders of generation who were killed in the most cruel and excruciating manner. Yet we believe that for some reason Hashem decided that that's what had to happen. It wasn't just an accident. When Mashiach comes, all of these puzzle pieces will be put together, and only then we'll be able to figure out the puzzle. Now it's a puzzle, but it's an unsolved puzzle. And some of the pieces look completely off, completely like they don't belong to this puzzle. They're the terrible pieces. They should be destroyed and thrown out. They shouldn't exist, such pieces. Yet, when Mashiach comes, all the pieces are going to be plugged in, and we're going to see how this is what had to happen exactly the way it did. I'm not answering your question. I'm just saying it's another question for another time. Okay,
And
so
also,
now
I'm sorry. I also just want to add, and I don't want to interrupt anymore. COVID took out a lot of tzedekah, and a lot of rebbeim too, and it's at its peak. There were a lot of rebbeim that died from COVID.
right. And there you
so
see it's mamish from Hashem. Why some lived, some died, some ventilators, some this, some that. Mamish from Hashem. Why? Azoi. Like they say in Yiddish, Azoi. Can we ask an Hashem? Can we understand? No. That's what we say at a Levaya. Hatsur tamim pa'aloi kichol derach of mishpat. Keil emuna ve'in avel tzadik v'yashar hu. Hatsur, the rock, tamim pa'aloi, his actions are perfect. Kichol derach of mishpat, all of his ways are just. Keil emuna ve'in avel, he's a trustworthy God, he does no evil. Tzadik v'yashar hu, he is tzadik and straightforward. So that's what we believe. And therefore we don't complain. When Rabbi Meir had two sons, and those two sons passed away on Shabbos. And Rabbi Meir's wife, Bruria, was a very great righteous woman. She didn't want to ruin her husband's Shabbos. So she put them in their rooms and covered them on their beds with a sheet. And didn't tell her husband. After Shabbos, she said to him, so what if the king gave you beautiful golden candlesticks to look after? And then he came to collect them. When he collected them, would you be angry at him, or would you say, thank you for letting me have them as long as you did? So Reb Meir said, I would say thank you. So she said, in that case, it's time to thank Hashem for letting us have these children for as long as he did. And she uncovered the sheets and showed him what had happened. So that's a very high level. Not everybody can accept it so quickly, but we do believe that that's true. That Hashem has his reasons and we don't understand. But coming back to the pasuk, now we can understand the pasuk according to the Rambam, because we said, since the Rambam holds that for wicked there is no specific divine providence, just general. So what does it mean that Moshe is asking Hashem to discern between the major sinners, the minor sinners? They should all be the same. And now we understand that no, it's not so. Hashem is always discerning. Hashem always sees. There's nothing outside of Hashem's knowledge. With the tzaddikim, you'll see and understand how he's intervening. With the wicked, you won't see and understand, but it's true. But Hashem is very specific, even when it comes to the wicked, and only punishes exactly the one who needs punishment, exactly how much punishment he needs. Nothing is by accident. No more than what he needs, no less than what he needs. Exactly just so, very specific. But it's not revealed. It's not something you'll necessarily be able to discern. and notice. Now, and this also explains why he mentions l'chol basar, all of the flesh, including Gentiles, because there is a difference between Jewish sinners and Gentiles. Jewish sinners who really have a deep relationship with Hashem in their core is connected to Hashem because they're Jewish, they have a neshama. So even when they are wicked, Hashem really cares about them in a deep way, but he covers it. So you can't see his deep involvement. He remains deeply involved, but it's in a concealed way. When it comes to the Gentile nations, because they don't have a deep relationship with Hashem, and most of them are wicked, so then Hashem deals with them in an external manner in the first place. It's not that it's a deep connection that's hidden, it's just not a deep connection in the first place. And this is why the wicked Jewish people are supposed to wake up and do tshuva when they experience a negative event, if they're still alive after it, because they're supposed to see that really Hashem was within that event, he was just hidden. And it's not that they were just left to the courses of nature. Okay, my friends, pretty deep class today. I hope you got it. I hope I got it. I'm still working on it.
Rabbi, give us a wrap up.
Give us a wrap up. The Rambam holds that Hashem looks after tzaddikim specifically, and less so non-tzaddikim, and less so wicked, and certainly not specific animals and other parts of this world. The Baal Shem Tov says Hashem looks after every single detail. And the way the Mittler Rebbe brings them together is that Hashem actually looks after every detail, but in a hidden way. We're not aware of that because it's hidden within the forces of nature. It's like an external relationship. Whereas with the Jewish person, the greater the tzaddik, the more so, is where Hashem is involved in a clear manner. And that's Hashgacha Pratis that the Rambam is talking about. And within the wicked of the Jewish people, there's also Hashem's involvement in a deep way, but that is concealed, and sometimes they have to experience tragedy to be woken up to it and to come back. Okay, my friends, I wish you all a good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Good
you, Rabbi
Shabbos,
Yashikov.
everybody.
Thank you.
You have a good night. A good day, I should say. Not night yet.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure, my pleasure.